And so maybe let's start with a first question, a broader question to allow each one of the guests to give an introduction of their work. So what do you think, what are digital commons and what role do they play in your work? And maybe we start with you, Sheila.
Thank you very much for this opportunity to speak on this great title. It was stolen from you. I thought it was just a nice, lovely title and brings two things nicely together. The digital commons, which is an opportunity for people, for communities to co-create and then distribute across the world, global platforms. That's how I'm experiencing it, and it has opened up many opportunities for us in Africa across different regions to do many different things, to co-create, to have new ideas, to see them come to life. Many of the platforms are created outside of Africa, and we adapt them to our locality and our context, and it's been really wonderful. But I love the counter-commodification bit, because that's where the contestation and the changes and the adaptations against perhaps what is offered by the platform, what it seeks to do, and then you adapt it as a community to your own context and your own needs. So it's been interesting for us. But I'll talk more about how I've experienced it and how I use it. I'll talk about TEDx. We do TEDx Nairobi. I'm a TED fellow. Many of you will know TED, the big TED Talks, and what it looks like, the American version, but they are localized versions where we have our own conversations within our own context, and it's been very empowering. Talk about TEDx. I'll talk about Africa Knows, microstock photography website, bringing African photographers to showcase their work using their own lens. And some of the work that we've been doing with bridging Nollywood, the Nigerian big film industry, and Riverwood, the Kenyan industry, which is just beginning, and trying to learn lessons from the platforms and the opportunities, the scales of market created by Nollywood. Thank you.
Thank you, Sheila. So, Alex, are you ready? Not yet, so I think we go on. Benjamin, maybe you want to be the next. Thank you.
Yes. So I think behind the term digital commons today, there are actually a lot of different areas and phenomena. So initially, the term refers mostly to what emerged in the late 80s, early 90s, which is the free software mostly and open source software. So it was about developers that started projects by sharing the source code of their software online, and so they could collaborate on a specific project. And then there was a whole industry and economic activity that converged around these commons. They created service value, economic value around the commons while contributing to the free software. And then slowly this concept translated into other information areas, so not only software code, but also knowledge and general purpose information. So the most classic example is Wikipedia, for instance, which is probably the most successful and biggest knowledge commons today. And then to other types of content, so photography, video, and so on. And this was helped a lot by the emergence of the Creative Commons license that Harvard professor Larry Lessig invented in 2001, I think. And the idea was to give a very easy tool for creators to share their work with an alternative to copyright. And so there is different license that enables you to share this content by saying what you are allowed to do with it. You need to quote the author, you need to reshare with the same rights, and so on. So pretty much like free software. Then you have the open data movement, which is about how to share data sets, public data mostly, with giving the rights to an association, a company, or whoever to reuse that data to create value out of that data, but while always keeping the data available, freely available for people. And especially like in the mobility sector, there are a lot of applications and services that use the open data generated by the city and the citizens to develop applications on top of that. And what's, I think, very interesting also, which I'm particularly interested about, is how now information can enable to create physical goods also. So that's what we call open hardware. So in relationship to free software, in open source hardware, what you share, like the source code of a product, let's say this table or a computer or a car, it's all the information that you need to reproduce this object with the tools you have available. So it can be the 3D files, it can be the bill of materials, it can be the step-by-step assembly manuals, the list of suppliers and components, materials, and what you need to do. So this has fueled the whole maker movement, the Fab Lab ecosystem, because when somebody creates a project, for instance, in Paris, and can reproduce it in Rio de Janeiro or in Tokyo using the same information and the same processes, for instance. And what the work we've been doing around that at WeShare and I've been doing was first to study the emergence of all these new practices and also to experiment in how these models can solve the big societal problems like climate change. So this was the project POC21 last year when we gathered 100 makers in one castle close to Paris, 6 months before the climate change conference of the UN in Paris, and tried to give them the tools and the material and say, okay, let's try to invent 12 open hardware projects for sustainable living. So there were solar generators, there were low-tech farming tools like pedal-powered tractors for farmers for small agriculture areas. There was a shower that was recycling hot water in real time by filtering it and putting it back to the shower head. And all of this was documented online. So this is what we do.
Great, thank you. And now, what about Alex? Are you ready? Yes, because Alex, as I mentioned, he's a director, and so it's normal that he brought pictures.
So normally when we in New Zealand start a presentation or we come to an event and we speak, we normally have a traditional Māori welcome, and I have to do that just so that I can get this correct. So it's Tihe Māori ora, I ngā mana I reo I rā rangati rama, no reira tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou katoa. Now, what I've just done is to outline my welcome to you and my best wishes as a participant in this particular meeting house. I'm giving thanks to the fact that we are all here gathered, and we recognize as well the people that come before us and the importance of this meeting. So, as I'm going to speak as a creative practitioner, I mean, I'm not a technologist, so immediately I'll say that, and all I'm doing here is speaking as someone who's in the practice of being a film and a theater director. I run a documentary film festival, and I'm acutely aware of some of the issues that come with the use of film clips, to be able to mash up film clips, the ability to get work out to be seen by as many people as possible. So that's where I'm going to be speaking from. So one of the things I want to talk about very quickly is that in film, there is a need with the whole area of screen industry to look at film quite differently. Film is no longer a single format product. It's a product that needs to be spread across multiple formats, multiple platforms. So when you're making a film, you're not just thinking about getting it out into cinema, you're thinking about the wider way in which you can immerse your audiences to give them a stronger user experience. So you're looking at the possibility of using the web and digital tools to be able to create a community. You create an interactive game. You create opportunities for the audiences to tell their stories as well. So you're building on the common platform of storytelling. You're creating new stories out of something that is the original story. You're creating new experiences. The challenges in relation to this is that there are dwindling resources in this world. We do not have enough funds. It is very difficult for creative people in arts and culture to find funds to make products. And the only way that we can do that, and the future, I believe, for the creative industry is in the area of collaboration. So the word collaboration for me is a very important word. I know we talk about sharing and a sharing economy, but I think collaboration is a very important part of that. And particularly because we need to understand the platforms, the mission, the objectives of individual people as they come together to create new products. But the problem is that there are competing interests, and I'm acutely aware of that because I'm a filmmaker. I don't make a lot of money. You know, I want to make a film. I want to get the film out there. I want all of you to see the film. I want you to be inspired. I want you to talk about it. I want you to do social change. Because that's ultimately the goal of a storyteller, is social change. At the same time, if I have a film, I would have given it to a sales agent or a distributor, and all they want to do is to collect money. So, you know, that's natural, but it defeats my purpose because I have an artist's soul. I want to be able to tell my story and get all of you inspired. So that is a problem that we have. And I think the way to solve a problem like this is to have clarity. I believe that it's the whole issue of ownership, what the rationale is for you to share and to collaborate, and what your expectation is. If you can get that clear at the very beginning, then I believe that there's a way for you to move forward. And to round it off, there's a particular film that we just showed at the documentary festival that I have been involved with. It's called Presenting Princess Shaw. It's one of the films that's just opening up in the US. It's won every award there is in the international festival. It's about an American YouTube wannabe. Her name is Samantha Montgomery. She's also known as Princess Shaw. Princess Shaw is, she works in a rest home. She helps elderly people. She dreams about becoming a star. She went and auditioned for The Voice and she failed. On the other side of the world, there was a man called Kutiman. Kutiman is a very well-known DJ. He's in Israel. He starts to go through YouTube to try to find clips, as we all do. We look at clips, we try to figure out if there's something that can inspire us. But he's got a different mission. His mission is not just for inspiration. His mission is to bring together clips and create a new clip. So using original work of other people to create a new piece of work. And he decided that this woman was incredible, so he started to make a film about her. And he used the samples of hundreds of musicians and performers that are free on YouTube. Now, no one knew that he was doing this. So she didn't know about it. The musicians didn't know about it. He pulled it together through using a film director called Ido Ha. And I'll just show you the trailer of the film.
March, 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 march. Pause, pose, blow a kiss. Hello, lovers.
Hey, YouTubers, my name is Princess Shaw. Check my YouTube channel and my update videos. Hello, lovers. Freestyle singing.
Hey. Yeah, I write my own songs. I just want to be successful, man.
Tonight I'll be performing. Please come out and support me.
She's very passionate, love what she's doing. It's Princess Shaw.
How's everyone doing? Well, the ones that are here. DJ, play it.
I wrote a lot of songs. I'm just gonna say what's real.
They took my tires off my car. Really? I've only seen that in the freaking movies.
When you keep trying to have the door slammed in your face 1,000 times, it makes you want to give up.
I had this song that I was kind of working on. Ooh, 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 ooh.
Oh my God! They said I'm going viral.
This is so awesome.
You take all the pain and all the negative and all the positive and everything, and you put it into song. That's power.
I never ever imagined that I would be here
I'm freaking out. I still don't believe it. I want to experience this once in my life. If I never do it again, let me do it once. I just pray the Lord has more in store for me. Mom, it reached 1 million views today.
Oh, baby!
Oh, Mom, don't start crying.
So, as she said, she had only somewhere in the region of about 800 views on all her videos. When that video went out, within a few days, she had over 1 million visitors to her site. So immediately, she became an overnight star. Now, some of you might ask, well, did she make any money out of it? She did not make any money out of this. That was not the reason why she shared her videos. I mean, this is what she said. I mean, it's a public platform. You put a song of yours on YouTube, it's fair game to me. If someone does something with it, uploads it and gets you all these views, why would you want to fight that person on it? You know, her view is that I shared it. This is my rationale. I gave it for free. I don't expect anything out of it. Someone does something with it, that's great. And we asked Kutterman what he said in response to that is, if the musicians I sampled want a cut, I'll give it to them, but I'm not earning anything. I guess that they uploaded their work to YouTube because they wanted it to be seen, so I thought it was fine. If someone wants to sue me, I could probably take the site down, but I'm not earning any money, so I don't see why anyone would be upset. So I'll just finish off by saying that in the creative industry, we believe very much in the digital commons because I think it's really important in the creative industry that we have an opportunity to collaborate, and collaboration without strings. And I think that these days, because you need to be able to work together creatively across the world, the ability to hack, the ability to mash is really, really important. There's an organization called the Free Culture Movement. It says a free culture is one where everyone thinks of themselves as a voice in a huge choir, whose power and beauty comes from its size and diversity, where the many don't bow to the few, and the few aren't responsible for the many. Thank you.
Thank you very much. You can bring your the microphone if you want. Thank you. So it will be your microphone. Okay, thank you. So digital commons in art, as I read in your article, digital commons in arts is a difficult thing. So I'm curious what you have to tell us now.
Yeah, I mean, the first thing to say is that I love Kutterman. I always kind of show it to my students. I think he's amazing. So, yeah, I mean, maybe my role is to kind of, theorize the digital commons a bit. It's pretty. It's not really defined. It's pretty kind of unclear what it is. People kind of use it in whatever way they can. I think. It probably makes sense to distinguish it from the sort of natural commons, which is kind of, the land, the air, the water, the forest, and so on. And if we do that, we see immediately two differences that seem to be kind of quite important for me to understand the problematics of the digital commons. One is that the natural commons is not abundant, which we kind of all sadly experience at the moment. The digital commons is, so whatever is online can be shared with as many people as possible without any problems within the kind of community that shares it. So this is the good news. The bad news is that the digital commons needs to be built. The land is there, the air is there, the water is there. It needs labor to kind of be maintained. It needs labor for this kind of commons to be governed so that it can work. But there is a difference. For the digital commons, we need to kind of create it, and we have to kind of invest labor to do so. And this is where kind of some of the problems arise. This is why some areas within the kind of commons, the sort of kind of area of software or of knowledge develop extremely well, whereas other areas don't develop that well. And I think within the kind of realm of arts, we have kind of various stories to tell, but some artists would like to make a living out of what they do, and they have a problem. So if we, that kind of brings us to the question, should the kind of commons just be something that is a resource for everyone to be shared, or would we kind of go into an area where we kind of talk about, let's say, platform cooperatives, where we kind of could indeed, Trevor Schultz talked about it earlier, where we could indeed find kind of business models to make money, but on a basis that, on a cooperative basis, where kind of everybody profits from it. What we have at the moment is a sort of kind of platform thing, where we kind of don't control the content. Of course, we can share everything on Facebook, but ultimately, this has nothing to do with the commons, because it's a business model with three parts. One part is us, who are not the customers but the objects, and our data is being sold to advertisers, and the advertisers are the real clients of Facebook. So that's kind of something to keep in mind, and I think I'll kind of leave it with that as a kind of initial thing.
Thank you very much. So we already heard now the word money, business model. We also heard digital commons is something that is good. It can be in different areas, in knowledge, in software, in arts. But now maybe let's try to find the factors that make digital commons successful. So what do you think? How do a digital commons project has to be set up so that it can survive, even though it is non-commercial? Any ideas?
Well, I'll give the example that I hope many of you know of, which is TED and TED Talks, and how that became a digital commons platform. So TED, Technology, Entertainment and Design, were a community, an elite, very elite, small group of Hollywood filmmakers and thinkers and Uber designers who used to meet in Monterey in the 70s. And they'd meet once a year in a very, it's an exclusive conference. You'd have to pay thousands of dollars and have to have an invitation to be part of it. But they came together once a year because they wanted to refresh themselves as to what is the next big thing, what is the next big idea out there. And it was a place to have an intellectual week to refresh themselves and to bring in other thinkers, to begin to explore ideas beyond their disciplines. So that community grew, and this is way before the internet, so 76, okay? So that community grew and had its own power base, and then eventually was sold or bought over by Chris Anderson, and he decided to put it on a digital platform, and decided that what goes on in those conferences, at least the talks, would be put online. So it's still it remains still, as in TED itself, a very exclusive club. But what happened to change it and what happened to broaden it is that they developed a product, and I'm not sure it was entirely conscious. It was not entirely altruistic in the way it is. So I'm not sure they knew what it would be, but they decided to develop a product called TEDx. TEDx is independently organized TED events, so that you get a license, and the license comes with very strict rules. You buy into the TED brand, and you're allowed to have your own conversations, and you're allowed to create, to curate it yourself, and bring in ideas that talk within your locality. So that movement has grown. TED in itself has over 1 billion views. TEDx is in, I think, nearly 2,000 TEDx's all over the world at any one time. There are different communities having conversations. Not all of them are online. We started TEDx Nairobi in 2009 because one of these strange moments when this Billionaire Boys Club, that's one of the things it's called, although it's not just a Billionaire Boys Club, but it's one of the names that is given to it because it has the Bill Gates and has Oprah, so it's not a boys club. And so they decided that they were curious. In 2007, they were curious about Africa. You know, they were going to look beyond America. Let's see so they decided to have for the first time a conference in Arusha. And therefore, let's invite some Africans in that we think would be interesting for our community to engage with. And they got a curator who's absolutely wonderful, and he got 100 TED fellows from across Africa and the diaspora who were doing interesting things. And Arusha, we had the opportunity of engaging with the TED community. And I think at that moment they realized that their tagline of ideas worth spreading could have much more impact if they gave some freedom to the communities and the people to buy into that space. And so that's how some of us who were made fellows at that time were able to be part of this and able to engage in conversations in a big way, bigger way than perhaps we would have been able to if we tried to curate and brand our own events, and also benefit from a community that can listen to each other across the globe. And for us, it's been tremendously empowering. And just to finish, it's not just about watching clever people talk about clever things. There's some very many powerful personal stories. And there's some transformational aspects to it. For us, it allowed, in Nairobi particularly, it allowed a conversation about LBGT issues. So one of the prominent writers in Nairobi, Binyavanga Wainaina, had been on the TED stage. And you know, homosexuality is illegal in many parts of Africa, and it's not something that we normally discuss in big platforms. But Binyavanga, being part of the TED community, was able to find some kind of, the platform gave him some kind of international, a bigger space for him to come out in Kenya. When he came out in Kenya, this was 2 years ago, it was very, very shocking to Kenyans. But in a way, it had allowed, because his visibility and the community within which he's situated had become bigger, and the conversations within which he could contribute were seen as broader, in a way, it allowed us in Nairobi to have bigger conversations about issues that are difficult because of being part of this a global brand. So that's just one example. We have many of the conversations that I think we wouldn't have easily had and had the visibility and had the impact if we hadn't had the backing of a bigger global digital commons platform.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Can I just ask something? Can I just ask how these conversations worked? So do they work in a similar way that, for example, I know TED?
Yes.
Which is a lecture that you watch on video and...
Yeah. Well, you see, that is the product ends up being the 18-minute, and that license and all the rules that go with it have been pretty strict because they're quite strict about their brand. It's loosening up a little bit. But then you are curating a day's experience. So everything that so there's more to it that happens in the day that doesn't end up on the videos. So you end up seeing the great talks, but we curate our events, and this year we curate lead-ups to the event that allow us to introduce the conversation, engage broader, and the TED Talk is a product that gets put online. So around it, there are bigger conversations.
Okay. So regarding the question of what makes digital commons successful, I think I would say that it's successful if it's being used, if it's being improved, if it's being remixed, if it's being like if it generates a lot of other projects, basically, and if a lot of people are using it. And I think a key, like a key to that, apart from the license, can be also how do you support and fund the ecosystem and the project holders and the people, the contributors that make it happen. And that's why I don't totally agree with what you said earlier, which is like it's necessarily non-commercial. I think you can have digital commons with a commercial model and a service model. And it's actually a very important distinction to make, because a lot of people confuse the fact that, okay, it's open, so it's free, so it's non-profit, so there is no business model. And that's not true, because I would say that apart from maybe Wikipedia, I don't know any large-scale digital commons that exist today. The whole free software movement, Linux, Apache, and all of that works because there is a service model to it. So people contribute to a commons, and then you have a lot of companies that deliver professional services, training, support, consulting, customization, etc., and that make a living out of it. And that's what pays the developer that developed the commons. And actually, I think there is also sometimes a fantasy about the fact that the digital commons naturally emerge from spontaneous contributions from many people that contribute to it. And again, apart from maybe Wikipedia, on which people contribute on different articles, usually you have one person or a group of people or a project that starts something, and then that opens their technology or their content for more contributions. And then somebody else picks the idea, remixes it, adapts it to a specific context, and puts back the knowledge into the community. And you need always an economic model for that, unless it's a non-profit project, which is totally fine. But I think if you want it to scale and to have massive impact, you need to have a sustainable, long-term, viable economic model. And there are actually many examples, even outside of software. So if you take open hardware, for instance, Arduino, which is one of the most famous open hardware projects. So Arduino is a microcontroller, so a small computer basically that you can use to add connectivity for Internet of Things project, for 3D printers, for drones, for embedded computing into cars or whatever. So it costs around 20 euros, but all the schematics and blueprints and everything are published online. So if somebody wants to make a copy, they can. What they cannot do is just use the Arduino brand. And they make money by simply selling the components, even though it's completely free for people to understand how it works, to maybe contribute to improve it. And the biggest value is because it's open, people trust the products, and they have a very strong community of people that continue to enrich the functionalities and the product. Another example in hardware, open source vehicle, OS vehicle. It's mobility automotive platform. So it's basically the structure of a car with the frame, the wheels, the steering wheels, the engine, etc. And all the technology is open source. And their business model is that they can either sell you kits so that you can make your own yourself easily without having to source all the different materials and make it yourself, or they do consulting and customization for municipalities or companies that want to make their own customized car on top of their platform. So, for instance, there is a region in the southwest of France where they use their platform to develop 4 types of electric vehicles. One is for agriculture, like a kind of a small tractor, basically. Another one is for car sharing. Third one for I think it's autonomous vehicle for I don't remember which use, and there is a 4th one which I don't remember, but it's not important. But so the thing is, like, they make money through this kind of services that they deliver to these municipalities or companies. And I think if you want to make, especially in technology and development, if you want people to put in the commons the technology they are developing to solve the big challenge of today, you need to develop viable business models for it. Otherwise, it just stays within a very small niche and circles of enthusiasts, and it never goes beyond that.
Maybe I'll just add, I think that when you're looking at digital commons, you need to build a community. I think a community is very important. So I think I'll just take it away and take it to a very basic level. People need to understand what they are part of. They need to understand why they need to be part of that. So there needs to be a lot of clarity as to the purpose of creating a digital commons. There needs to be a community that's bound to each other. They understand that by supporting each other, they have the ability to free up or liberalize and create something quite special. I'm firmly of the opinion that a government should be, or governments should be involved in funding the infrastructure of creating digital commons, because I think that this is something for the benefit of the wider community, and you know, individuals cannot compete with corporate interests, so therefore they need to have support from another source, and I think that the source needs to come from the government in terms of providing some funding, so that people that are involved in building a digital commons have at least an infrastructure that can allow them to build it. Now, what they do after that, how they monetize it, is a different matter entirely. But I think that people need to be given a leg up, because, you know, everyone's a struggling artist, everyone's a struggling creative. At some point in time, you know, they still have to go and pay their mortgage and their rent. And, you know, if they have at least the knowledge to know that they've got some support to help to create that will give them a lot more freedom to be able to achieve the type of goals that they would like to achieve. So for me, it's really important to build a community. It's important to be clarity, and that in the beginning stages, there needs to be some support to help create that. It needs to come from a much more formal source.
Okay. Can I react to that? I mean, I think, like, you cannot rely entirely on support from government, on public support for the commons, because, like, when there is a change of majority or in election, then the new government doesn't like the previous one and they just cut the funding. And I totally agree that the public authorities should support that and help with the infrastructures, make some types of call of projects. It can be like ignition funding, but like counting on that as a viable, sustainable economic model, I think is super risky, because when there is a change in politics, then you lose everything. And I don't think that can scale and be sustainable on the long term if you don't create a viable economic model that is independent from politics.
I totally agree that when you have a change of government, that you can have a situation where government policies will mean that one lot of funding will no longer be repeated. I think that we need to find a way to create a first tranche of funding. And it may come from the government, it may come from a philanthropic organization, but someone's got to do that. In New Zealand, we're currently appealing to the New Zealand Film Commission, which is our film agency, to get them to support the creation of a digital commons. Now, they're not going to give us funding forever, but they might give us funding for the first 2 or 3 years to get it up and running, and then it's up to us to find another business model or community partners that will help us carry it forward.
Well, I'd like to ask a question, because it's about the film industry, and I'm wondering where our film industry in Nigeria will go, because the business model that it has relied on at the moment, which actually yields nearly $600 million a year, adds like 5.2% to our GDP, and employs over 1 million Nigerians, is strange. It's a marriage of uneasy bedfellows. So what happens is a filmmaker goes out and he decides to make a film. It costs about $10,000, $5,000, $10,000. It's got a week, and he, you know, in the crudest, roughest way, makes a film and has to sell, and perhaps makes about 200,000 DVDs, but has to sell it within a week, because that's the short before the pirates get it and start copying it and put it online, etc. So they just rely on this. Their business model is, we just make as much as we can before the pirates get it, because we know the pirates will get it, and that's how that's how it works. And the pirates get it, and you know, it's tiers of people making money off a creative's product, and kind of that's the ecosystem. People have accepted that, and the industry has grown with this. But I'm wondering how sustainable this model is, although it continues to grow and it's second to Bollywood. But how does this work? And surely at some point there must be an intervention or something that can make it much more robust and help us to value the work that our creatives do at the initial stage.
When I teach my students at film school, I always say to them, if you want to make film, you're never going to be rich. That's the first thing I say to them. So, you know, you go in to make film because it's a passion. It's something that helps you express your soul. Having said that, if you're successful like Peter Jackson, yes, you'll make a lot of money. But the average independent filmmaker will not make money. There's no way they can make money. They have to rely on being able to work in commercial operations, like working in an advertising agency or working television, to be able to continue to be able to pay for their passion. In New Zealand, and it's a bit different from some countries, because we do have a state-funded system where the state's funding filmmakers to make films. So they're helping to support them from the beginning stages to an independent filmmaker to smaller productions. If you want to make the $5–10 million productions, then you need to go commercial. You need to go and look for a business partner, whether in China or the US, to be able to make that work. But for the development of our culture, our national identity in terms of art and culture, that's being funded through the state.
I think that's it's a really interesting conversation about if the state should fund the infrastructure or should fund the content. What sort of kind of, there are kind of, different ideas about what the state should fund. I think, this is a conversation that I think we need to have. I think it's only kind of a recent conversation, the first time that Astra Taylor wrote about it in a book, The People's Platform, which is, she demanded that public money needs to kind of go in, that a platform can be built that is a commons, and in a way that makes a lot of sense, because that's what that's how television started in most countries, that you have a public channel or two public channels, and then you have a few private ones, and the internet never started that way, but there is kind of no reason why it shouldn't be different. And but how this could look is a kind of really open question, with probably with kind of all sorts of possibilities.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking about. What role does the öffentlich-rechtliche Rundfunk could play here? Maybe if anyone has a question or a remark, you're very welcome to join the discussion. So, yes, we have another microphone who is arriving.
I think when you bring in state funding, your opposite part will be some bureaucrat who will decide on the value of your project, and is that really what you want?
I totally agree with that, and I think that you have the danger if you've got state funding, it comes with strings, but it comes with any kind of partnership. If you have a partnership with corporate, it's exactly the same thing. They would probably say to you as well, is that, if you're going to do this, these are the commercial imperatives that we would want it to satisfy. I think that where we have a difference in New Zealand is that we've set up independent boards for the decision of an application. So it's not just a situation of bureaucrats sitting there trying to decide, and depending on the flavor of the government, that certain things will happen. But they appoint a whole lot of different creative people to sit on a board to look at the creative decisions. And just taking up on what Andreas said, I mean, the whole idea of commons is that it's common property. It's like the parks. It's like the rivers. It's like all the facilities that we all share in. And that was built by governments. So certainly shouldn't the government be responsible for creating the digital commons as well? And that's kind of the way I'm thinking. I'm not saying that I'm right, but it's something that we're all struggling with, because where do you find the money and the support to create it?
Can I ask another question? So here's the problem. If some group of creatives are being supported and they create a product, film, and another group are not being supported and create a product, film, and it goes to a platform, and it's one marketplace. I, as the consumer, have gotten used to not paying for anything. I don't want to pay for. It's all film to me, whether it was funded or whether it wasn't funded, and so it seems to me that there's a dynamic going on that we have the market. Either the market becomes more conscious of paying something and valuing it, or if it's never going to pay anything, how sustainable is it going to be if some people need a lot of money to create? Where will it go?
Maybe to add something more specifically related to technology, which I know is like different sector than obviously the art and movie industry. But also, since you were mentioning Astra Taylor's book, I think like today, I really believe in like public funded research, like for fundamental research and long-term technology thinking in academic labs and so on. I don't have the feeling that public money is what's going to fund the technologies that will save us for the big mess we are in right now, like climate change and zero waste and democracy and access to water and all of that. Like the trend is more the opposite, which is like the states everywhere cutting the welfare states and public subsidies to many things. Like it's a big mess. So I think like especially in the like to invent the technology and the products and the tool and the systems that will maybe try to solve these big issues we are in, and we don't have a lot of time. The reality is that there are lots and lots and lots of money lying around on bank accounts that really suffer from negative interest because the people who have this money don't even know where to put it to not lose that money. So there are actually ways to get that. And I mean, my current thought and what I'm trying to work on right now, even though it's really at the early stage mode, is can we use techniques and models from the impact investing area. So impact investing is basically venture capital that works for purpose before profit, and that's whose mission is not to make a huge profit, but just to fund social enterprise and projects that try to achieve a social good or environmental good. And I think there is a lot of intrinsic values in the openness and the commons that also reinforce this social mission. The fact that you put all your efforts into the same basket, into a common pool, and you accelerate a positive innovation. The fact that you can keep a democratic and civic control on the technology because it's completely transparent in the way it operates, on the way it operates. The fact that it encourages decentralized architectures and maybe avoids the concentration of power and wealth and governance. And I think there is something to do in creating like impact investment funds to invest on a long-term perspective into this open technology for renewable energy, for zero waste, for access to water, and so on. And that's, I think, a very promising area. And you can also imagine techniques that like would prevent like the negative effect of traditional venture capital, which is that you need to resell the company and the startup for a high profit in the end. And instead of investing in exchange for equity, for instance, there are models like revenue participation, in which investor puts money, and then once the company makes a margin and profit, it pays back the investor, and then at the end the investor leaves, and the company gets back to the hand of its founders who can manage it on the long term. And I think this is something very interesting to explore for digital commons for technology.
Thank you very much. Unfortunately, we are running out of time. We have 2 minutes left, and we have one question or a remark left from the audience. So I'm very sorry and also very curious of our last question.
Well, thank you very much for the presentations and discussion. Well, at the beginning of the internet, we all dreamt that it was going to be completely free. Especially when the Web 2.0 came, which is the paroxysm of exchange. Well, Creative Commons is positive, completely positive. And it's an expression that is made of 2 words. which are semantically very positive. Creativity is, well, if humanity cannot be saved by creativity, I don't know how it can be saved. Okay. And commons, the best philosophers of our time are working on the idea of the new commons. But gradually, capitalism surreptitiously is getting into the internet more and more. For instance, all the academic journals are gradually going into the internet. But the more important they are, you are going to pay for one single article more than the price of a book. It's terrible. How can you see, you who are working with Creative Commons, how can you see the power of the resistance of the Creative Commons in face of this pantagruelic force of capitalism?
In terms of art, I don't know if I kind of agree with Alex that artists should just accept that, that they kind of do their work for free and don't get paid up. This is a big debate. I can say something for academics, and I feel really strongly about it, about what you just said with open access. Academics get paid by their work, by the taxpayer. Whatever the outcome of that research is, should be available for free to everybody. So, and that should always have been the case. That never was the case, but it never was a big issue, I think, until the 70s, because there wasn't, it was still this kind of ivory tower, and kind of more and more people then started to study what then emerged was the knowledge worker, the knowledge society, the cognitariat, all that. So knowledge became something like a sort of kind of a productive force. It became a means of production as well. It became very important economically. And what happened over the kind of last few years with journals is kind of an absolute tragedy. But I think there is a fight back at the moment. And the fight back has started with open access journals, which are kind of out there more and more and more. And the fight back, I think, now continues with open access books. We're kind of seeing in the UK, we're kind of seeing about 4 or 5 projects now that seem to kind of work. And it's not so tricky because the academics are doing all the work. So the only kind of little bit work that's kind of done by the publisher is the proofreading usually. So it's not that hard to kind of organize that, but academics are kind of totally lazy and about this whole issue and don't really care. But I think it's changing, and I think give us another 5 years and hopefully at least this bit should look very different. Because, as I said, academics get paid for their stuff, so there is really no need that this knowledge becomes enclosed. This is a shame. This is a real shame that we kind of did let that happen, I think.
Okay, so we end with this term, shame. But nevertheless, it was for me a very happy discussion. I was very happy to have you here, happy to have the audience here, and I wish you a wonderful last evening at the Goethe-Institut's Kultursymposium in Weimar. Thank you all very much.
Thank you.